those people that have been building something very successful and that have become, very rich very quickly, they need to be seeing something that other people are not seeing, right? This is their edge in the market, and this is why they make so much money. So not seeing that from SBF is a sign that either fraudulent or somehow corrupted, right? Like the money doesn't come from where you think it's going, or there is no money in there. It's one or the other. It seems like it was both with it was both with SBF.
Hi, this is David Gerard, author of Attack of the 50-Foot Blockchain and Notorious Crypto Hater. You're listening to Coin Fugazi. Sell all your coins.
Of course, that's a Fugazi. All right?
That's a Fugazi? How do you know it's a Fugazi? You looked at it for 2 seconds.
Well, it's a fake.
Yeah, I know what a Fugazi is.
It's all a Fugazi. You know what a Fugazi is?
Fugazi, it's a fake.
Yeah, Fugazi, it's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fairy dust.
Coin Fugazi.
Coin Fugazi.
Coin Fugazi. Coin Fugazi. Coin Fugazi. Coin Fugazi.
We have decided to liquidate SBF, FTZ, CZ in a week that shook the world Satoshi created. It's an original serial from Coin Fugazi, and this installment is with Bitcoin ABC founder Amaury Séchet. He's arguably best known as the engineer bold enough to fork Bitcoin in a serious, meaningful way, and that led to a time when really that fork, BCH, became a real rival to Bitcoin supremacy for a few years. All of his work culminated into eCash, ticker XEC, an innovative crypto that's incorporating avalanche tech, among other features, to carry the industry forward. And you can find out more about eCash out at e.cash. That's e.cash. Amaury Séchet, welcome to Coin Fugazi, brother.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I love our conversations. I always learn stuff. I always get a ton out of them. And so I figured to talk about the players here, you're in more recent years, you've become an outward facing presence, which is very different for devs. They usually kind of sit in the background and they do their thing. And so you've done a lot of media, but importantly, and more importantly, in my opinion, you're in the background. You know the scaffolding, you know the infrastructure, you know all the tech isms and techno babble and all that good stuff, and you know how to tell the difference. You've also had a kind of a long history with some of the players, notably Changpeng Zhao, CZ. CZ has come off as kind of a hero in this. He's kind of like the guy who took down the 800-pound gorilla. Tell us a little bit about sort of your comings and going with CZ and Binance and your measure of the man, if you know much about him.
Yeah, so I don't really know him personally, but obviously he's been in the space for a long time. Even before Binance, he was already working with like exchanges and stuff like that. Like the first time I think I heard of him was when there was this dispute between Roger Ver and OKX about the use of the bitcoin.com domain, and he came up in support of Roger Ver, and explaining the situation, and it seemed like very level-headed at the time. No, specifically for Binance, I think the thing that really Binance brought to the table is all these gross hacking techniques that we've seen social network before crypto use. And that allowed him to grow very big and capture a lot of market very fast. He also always has been very open to adopt like all the new technologies that have been brought in the space. Some of them good, some of them bad. But I think the attitude that Binance has taken is that they are the marketplace. They are not there to decide what are the good and the bad tokens, right? And what are the good and the bad project. They are just gonna let the market deal with it. So that assumes some responsibility from the part of the users, but it's a good approach. Quite some time ago, we had various discussion about that, like when exchanges were listing things like BSV or X, or like that are a bit fishy. And they essentially, to me, there are two approaches that do make sense, right? Like one of them would be the approach that Coinbase used to have. I don't know if there is really an exchange like that anymore, but Coinbase used to be very selective about the token that they list, and you knew that if you were trading something on Coinbase, this was a project that like made sense and was solid. It's not a guarantee that the price go up, right? But it's at least a guarantee that it's not a scam, and that it's a real legitimate project. And then on the other side, you have exchanges like Binance that list everything, right? And they're gonna tell you, well, this is not up to us to make the selection. We're just like listing everything, and then this is up to the public to decide. Those are the two approaches that make sense, I think. So in that sense, Binance with these two aspects has brought, itself like quite a reputation in the space, and I think it's deserved. From a business perspective, it does make a lot of sense that they get all that credit.
It's not the first time he's kind of played quasi savior, as you alluded to. I guess more famously, he basically said he would not list BSV, and that kind of started a chain reaction. I think Kraken did the same, and some others. And
but that's not exactly what happened, right?
Okay.
I think they listed BSV first, but when Craig Wright started to litigation against exchanges and various people in the space, developers and stuff like that, then he decided to come around and not list it, which I think makes sense. And then you have other exchanges like Kraken that are a bit more conservative, that were like, we're not gonna list it at all.
Yeah. I'm glad you clarified that. He is a very interesting figure in the sense that he's both the part of the cause of the FTX contagion, in the sense that Binance, I guess, basically helped fund FTX in a weird way, and then in accepting that FTT token, obviously he decided to liquidate, as is the title of our serial here. So it's interesting because I before we came on, someone had said, where's all the FTT, or what'd you do with the FTT? He's like, we're still holding the bags. So in a even weirder way, he kind of hurt himself, at least in the short term, right?
Yes and no, right? Because the value of the FTT was really on paper, right? There was no real value behind it because FTX was insolvent. So I don't know if they realized that or not, but by selling at least part of it at a loss, obviously they took quite a big loss. It's still a way for them to get some value of it. Whereas for people that came in later, they got no value of it, right? So in a sense, it was good for them.
Yeah, and I think it was trading at around 22 is sort of the famous number that sticks in my head, $22. A token. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, here is the deal. Like FTX was insolvent. This is really what they went in there, right? And the fact that Binance dumped those FTT token was the trigger for that information to be revealed. But eventually that information would have been revealed, right? Because I think they had like almost 10 billion of assets under management. Mm-hmm. But like right now, the accountability says that they have less than 1 million in asset in their vault, right? So, so there is like 99.9% of the money missing. And when you have like 99.9 of the money missing, percent of the money missing, then it's just a matter of time before someone notices.
Yeah. And for him, so in my mind, when I saw the tweet, it didn't register. I mean, I knew that wasn't going to be a good thing, he said over a 6-month period that they would be drawing down on their FTT holdings. and certain disclosures. He was, cryptic, but he wasn't a brat about it. He literally could have just dumped it on retail and had them eat it up and just kind of quietly collect whatever, maybe billions himself, relatively speaking. It just kind of naturally took the price down, assuming the sell pressure. But instead he did it transparently. Do you think there's something more sinister behind that, or because he's claiming, whenever I see him talk about it, people assign him all this great, you took down you slayed the dragon, or because not that smart. I was just being transparent, just kind of telling you what we were doing.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they knew the extent to which FTX was insolvent. That is not clear, right? Because then they tried to buy FTX back and they sent, lawyer and accountant and stuff like that to review the books. So clearly they didn't know at least the extent of the damage, right? They didn't know the extent to which FTX was insolvent. But even if FTX is not insolvent, I think it makes sense for Binance to sell those tokens, and they probably should not have accepted them in the first place, right? Because they invest in FTX, but the value of FTX in that investment is based on the holding of those tokens that they created themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, let's say, I have a company, I create this token, I said this token is worth like 2 billion in terms of market cap, and now the company is issuing those tokens, so the company is worth 2 billion, and now I'm taking investor money and I'm gonna give them this token as a collateral after the investment. That does not make sense, right? Like, this is an accounting trick. There is no value there. So I don't think it makes sense for Binance to have accepted those tokens in the first place. And I think at some point they realized that. They were like, like, this is like, the value of that thing is completely circular and it comes from nowhere. It's just accounting. So we probably need to get rid of that.
Yeah. And from my understanding, the trigger came from a CoinDesk article that sort of revealed it. And I'm not sure where they got their info from. But a few days before November 6th, I believe it was on the 2nd of November, CoinDesk published that, and then it was certain revelations, blah, blah, blah. And I'm wondering obviously popularly, I know which comes first, the CoinDesk article and then CZ's tweet, but I'm wondering if maybe someone inside Binance was like, holy moly, we gotta, do something, we gotta, and fed CoinDesk, and then CoinDesk, prints it, and then he goes, oh, geez, hands are tied, guys. Sort of thing. Like, I'm really curious about it and how that all kind of played out.
You think Binance would have tipped CoinDesk?
Well,
I don't know.
The thing is, here's what I'm struggling with, I guess, and you're always the one to kind of sober me up and splash water on my face intellectually. That dude, CZ, is very smart. He's a very good businessman. How could he accept that crap, that piece of junk, and then be caught with his pants down? You know what I mean? Like,
well, here is the thing, like, Binance is literally dealing with hundreds of projects, right? Many hundreds. And the company has grown extremely quickly as well. So I'm not sure that CZ himself, oversaw that. And then, like, for whatever reason, this resurfaced, this is a subject of discussion, and they are like, like, some higher ups are like, this doesn't make sense, right? We need to unwind that in some way.
I think
that would be my expectation of what happened. So in that sense, I would think it's more likely that the CoinDesk article precedes the decision to sell than Binance, like tipping CoinDesk.
Hey everyone, quick edit here. It does appear that Ian Allison has since cleared up the rumors about a Binance link to CoinDesk that basically set all this off. As you'll hear in this clip that was taken from Woo Blockchain, which we'll link to in the show notes.
This, I want to see on the record for everyone, this did not come from Binance. This balance sheet did not come to us via Binance. So I just wanted to say all that to start with. Thanks.
Thanks again for listening. Now back to the rest of the episode.
Someone tipped him. I wonder if it was maybe someone inside of FTX on the poly.
I think it's more likely, yes.
Yeah,
that's would be my expectation.
One thing's for sure is that as we move from this, we're going to learn more and more and more, especially as the heat gets turned up on that crew in the Bahamas. But just to kind of tie a button here on CZ, he's an interesting figure. Still a relatively young guy, born in China, came to Canada, I guess, or as we say in the United States, Canada, when he was around 12, give or take. Really kind of you keep using the word heroic figure, but he at least his public persona is kind of, he worked at McDonald's, service sector jobs. At least that's the legend, and sold all of his belongings in 2013-ish to buy Bitcoin, and kind of rolled the dice. And
well, I mean, when we work at McDonald's, you probably don't have that many belongings to begin with.
Well, yeah, I kind of conflated them all as one thing, but at some point he worked at McDonald's. I don't think he was working at McDonald's and sold. He's got kind of a nice, I guess he lives in Dubai now, which is interesting for a bunch of reasons, which I also heard. Again, what's funny is I'm not a conspiracy guy at all, but I've heard that was a place that some of the FTX guys wanted to escape to, especially Caroline from Alameda, because they don't have an extradition treaty with the U.S. And I'm not sure if that's true at all. But one of the things that
it's very difficult to extradite from Dubai, and when you come to finance and stuff like that, they are quite loose, like way looser than Western countries. So if you committed some kind of financial crime, it's a good plan to go there. For instance, it was discovered not so long ago that Ruja Ignatova is also in Dubai.
Yeah, that's the one.
At least she was recently, right? And it seems that she settled there.
Yeah, that's the missing crypto queen, Ruja Ignatova. She's part of OneCoin, which this is going to rival that, and in terms of private financial scams, I'm going to say this is going to overtake it, the FTX affair. But interesting that CZ chose to live there. I believe Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF, had an antagonist relationship with the CZ, at least online, and was quoted or tweeted recently, just before all this broke down, is when they were having the kind of heated debate about regulation, is that I guess Sam kind of baited him and said, hey, why don't you come to DC, and show up with me, and or can you, are you allowed to come to DC? Sort of thing, kind of a mild smack in the face. So there's, I'm trying to wind this up, and I just keep finding more connections in my head. But do you?
Yeah, that's the thing with that story, right? Like it's just stating the fact. Like, I don't know who was saying that, but just stating the fact of the story make you sound like Alex Jones, right? Like there is, the story is so crazy in all kind of direction, and the more is revealed, the more crazy it gets.
Yeah, and the DeFi is getting some of the blame, and also some of the, I guess it would be kind of considered a savior. Or if we don't trust custodial centralized exchanges, and the argument, a lot of this could have been avoided. And the reason I bring it up is that Jeff Garzik, who obviously has his own history with Bitcoin Core, he's now leading Block and Vesper. He tweeted out just a day or so ago an old tweet. He basically said that back in 2020, SBF tried to run the same FTT, FDV scam on a DeFi platform, and that was Cream. And basically, he tried to do this. SBF has 2 years ago tried to do this with Cream Finance, kind of a similar, caught by DeFi people who outed him publicly and just said, hey, this is ridiculous. And trying to think of the fellow's name. I think it was Spencer Noon. Is that the fellow? I think. Spencer Noon was the guy who kind of caught him back in October, almost 2 years to the day, and he wrote that Sam had basically, he's definitely trying to pull one over on them with this worthless token. So he couldn't.
But Kelso, where were the signs? We could not see that coming. Where were the signs? I don't understand.
People don't know the sarcasm in your voice. Right. And this was a full 2 years ago. So my question, because you're a bit of a, as far as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, you're a skeptic of DeFi, or you were initially. Is decentralized finance kind of the answer here, or part of it, or what do you think?
I mean, yeah, I don't want to throw everything away in DeFi because there are some good stuff, but obviously, like, a lot of that is like you borrow this to get that, to borrow that, to use that collateral with this, and yada yada. And at the end, like, it's very circular, and there is nothing, there's nothing at the root of it, right? And all that activity can create a lot of value on paper, and for people who cash out early enough, right? But then it unwinds in the other direction. It's the magic of leveraging stuff. You can create a lot of value on paper, but if you don't cash out, it can also disappear in the other direction just as fast. So it's a bit risky. I know that some people even argue that just like borrowing and lending is bad. The reality is, I don't think it's really the case. But okay, so borrowing and lending is good when you borrow to invest into productive asset that produce more value than the interest rate at which you borrow. And obviously, like, there is always the possibility of getting it wrong, but in general, that's the situation in which borrowing is good. So every time there is borrowing going on, you have to wonder, like, what is this money going toward? And is that thing some kind of productive asset that's going to produce at least as much as the interest rate of the borrowing? And if yes, then there is no problem. It's just like speeding up the economic growth of the system. But when this is not the case, that at some point this is going to unwind, and this is really bad. And when you look at what's going on in DeFi, like a good 95% of it at least is the second kind, right? It doesn't go in productive assets. So that's a very dangerous environment, because you don't know when it's going to unwind, and when it's going to unwind, a lot of value just goes poof.
Yeah, and it's funny because we used to say this all the time, and people would cite Mises and Rothbard and others who had warned about this kind of stuff forever. And it seemed like we're having this classical debate, over and over again. And to see it happen in real time, it went 5 days. November 6th, FTX was saying, this is just a competitor trying to rattle our cage. November 11th, they formally filed for bankruptcy in the Bahamas. I mean, amazing. That's an amazing turn of events. This guy had, at one point, they were saying this is SBF now, $29 billion. He wasn't even 30 years old. Now he's, is essentially, well, I'm sure he's got money on his own, but on paper.
Yeah, that money, it went somewhere.
I agree.
It went somewhere, and he probably managed that somewhere includes himself.
Yeah. So in the final few minutes here, let's talk a little bit about eCash. How does eCash, does it address any of this stuff? Is it part of the answer to what we're talking about?
It really depends how you define the problem, but yeah, the kind of problem we've been tackling with eCash are problem of usability. And this is really what we want to focus on, because if you don't have that at the root of things, then you are building a scaffolding that is not built on good foundation, and it always unwind at some point. So, like, looking back at Binance, so Binance is listing eCash, obviously, and recently we've released the avalanche consensus mechanism, and with that we can get one block finality. And what do you know, Binance is one of the first exchange that is willing to leverage that to provide to their user one block finality. So it loops back to what we were saying at the beginning, where they are willing to move very fast with new project and deploy new stuff very quickly. So that's very nice. I hope the rest of the exchanges and the space in general is going to follow. That would be fantastic, because this is by improving the user experience that we improve the value of the project, and everything else is based on that, right? Because anything that is not based on that is just accounting trick, and the value is gonna just go poof at some point. Can go very high though before it goes poof, but it's gonna go poof at some point.
Yeah. Fantastic. It's great to hear that Binance is gone to take Emin Gunseer's and Co.'s innovation here, and see that a project like eCash is making good use of it. And I agree that that's at least part of the answer, that useful, utilitous, medium of exchange, store of value, all of that kind of comes together in one thing. So that's really, really good to hear. So that's a perfect, I think, place to end it. How can people find your work, Amaury, kind of keep up with you, and keep up with all that you're doing?
I'd say so bitcoinabc.org if you want to follow the development of eCash, or e.cash for everything related to eCash. Otherwise, for me personally, it's gonna be Diddlenix pretty much everywhere. Where I'm most active is probably on Twitter, and yeah, that's it.
Very good. Well, I know you're a busy man. You're being pulled in about 1,000 different directions, and I appreciate you taking time out to talk to us here, to kind of make this little historical record. I really do appreciate it, man, and hopefully we'll have you back on soon.
Yeah, and you know what? I have time for you. I wish this podcast grows a ton, because the quality in there is really, really high. And I'm just saying, like, I don't know about that episode, right? I don't want to judge that episode because I mean it, and this is very partial. But in general, the quality is very high, and I think the space would really benefit from this kind of content being more popular.
That's nice of you to say. I really appreciate it. You've always done right by me. So excellent, man. Thank you again so much, and we'll be in touch soon.
Ciao, ciao.